A struggling single mom woke up to find an unexpected $37 million sitting in her bank account. At first, she thought it was a glitch, but when she tried to withdraw some of it, things took a turn no one could have imagined, and what followed left everyone completely stunned. Before we continue the story, tell us where you are watching from. If you like this story, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have a special story for you. Kira Peterson was a single mother living in a small apartment on the edge of the city. Her life was simple, but far from easy. Each day started early, often before the sun was fully up. She would wake up, make breakfast for her two young children, help them get ready for school, and walk them to the nearby bus stop. After that, she would head to her job at a local grocery store, where she worked as a cashier. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it paid the bills. Barely. She didn't complain. She didn't have time to. Her days were filled with routines. Wake up, feed the kids, work her shift, pick up groceries, help with homework, cook dinner, and prepare for the next day. Her budget was always tight. Sometimes she had to say no to things her children wanted. New shoes had to wait. A fun trip to the zoo had to be postponed. Every dollar mattered. Kira was careful with money. She tracked every expense in a small notebook. Rent, groceries, bus passes, and school supplies were her main focus. She never spent on herself. Her clothes were old but clean. Her phone was outdated but worked. Her priority was always her kids. She wanted to give them a better life, even if it meant she had to sacrifice. One morning, like many others, Kira was getting ready to go shopping. She had made a short list: milk, eggs, rice, and some fruits if there was enough money left. As always, she checked her banking app before leaving. It was just a habit, something she did without thinking. Usually, the number she saw on the screen made her nervous. Most times, her balance was under $100. Sometimes it was even less. But that day, something strange happened. The number on the screen wasn't small. It wasn't even close to what she expected. It said $37 million. At first, she thought the app was broken. She closed it and reopened it. The same number appeared. She stared at the screen for a long time. Her heart beat faster. Her hands started to shake. She sat down, trying to stay calm. Her mind couldn't understand it. It didn't make sense. She hadn't won any lottery. She hadn't inherited money. No one she knew had that kind of money. Her account had never even held $1,000 at once. She checked again, making sure she was looking at her account and not someone else's. Her name was there. Her account number was right. The balance stayed the same. It felt unreal. She didn't know what to think. She felt a mix of fear, confusion, and hope. Part of her wanted to believe it was true. Maybe, somehow, something good had finally happened. Maybe this was her chance. But another part of her was scared. What if it was a mistake? What if someone came and took it all away? What if it caused trouble? Kira sat quietly for a few more minutes. She didn't know what to do. She thought about her kids. She thought about all the things this money could change. A new home, a better school, a future that didn't feel so heavy. But she also thought about how strange it was. She had never heard of anything like this happening before. She decided not to tell anyone yet. Not until she knew it was real. Not until she understood more. Her heart was still racing, but she stood up, picked up her bag, and looked outside. The day seemed normal, but everything had changed. Without saying a word to anyone, she stepped out of her apartment and started walking toward the nearest ATM. It was a small machine near a gas station. She had used it many times before. This time felt different. As she approached it, her hands were slightly shaking. Her breath felt heavy, and her mind was racing. She wasn't sure what she expected to happen. Maybe the number would be gone. Maybe it was just a glitch. But she needed to see it with her own eyes. She inserted her card and typed in her PIN. The screen loaded, and the number appeared again. The balance was the same. $37 million. Her eyes stayed locked on the screen. It looked real. It didn't look like a mistake. Still, she needed proof. She knew that anyone could take a screenshot, but what if the money wasn't really there? She thought for a moment and decided to take action. She typed in the amount she wanted to withdraw. It wasn't a small amount. It was far more than anything she had ever taken from that machine. She typed in $100,000. Her finger hovered over the final button before she pressed it. Her stomach turned as she waited. The machine paused. Then a strange sound came from inside. The gears turned louder than usual. A message appeared telling her to wait. She looked around. No one else was near. The streets were quiet. A few seconds later, the machine began to release bills. The stack grew and grew. It didn't stop at a few hundred. It kept going. Her heart started to beat faster again. The money came out in large bills. The machine stopped only after releasing the full amount. She reached out and picked up the stack. It felt heavy in her hands. The paper was crisp. The edges were clean. It looked brand new. She didn't count it. She just knew it was real. She placed the stack in her bag quickly and looked around once more. The walk back home felt longer than usual. Every step she took made her feel more nervous. She held her bag tightly against her side. Her eyes moved from corner to corner. She kept checking behind her, unsure of what she was looking for. Her mind was full of thoughts she couldn't sort. She wondered if someone would stop her. She wondered if she had done something wrong. The weight of the money didn't just sit in her bag. It sat in her chest. She thought about her children. She thought about her small apartment. She thought about her job at the store. Could this be the break she had needed? Could it be some kind of blessing? But something didn't feel right. The money was too much, too sudden, too unexplained. She had done nothing to deserve it. She hadn't entered any contests. She hadn't spoken to any lawyers. No one had called her. There had been no messages. Just the money sitting there in her account, like it had always belonged to her. As she walked, she passed the same houses and stores she always passed. People were going about their day. Cars moved slowly down the streets. A few dogs barked from behind fences. It all looked the same, but she felt like a completely different person. She had money now, money that didn't make sense, and she didn't know what to do with it. She kept walking, her arms wrapped around her bag. She didn't stop to rest. She didn't check her phone. Her only goal was to get home. Once she was behind closed doors, maybe she could breathe again. Maybe she could think clearly. Maybe she could figure out what this money meant. But for now, she just kept walking, quiet, tense, and unsure. The cash was real. That much she knew. Everything else was still a mystery. The road ahead was quiet. The wind blew gently, and a few leaves rolled across the sidewalk. A dog barked in the distance. Kira passed a clothes shop with its shutters down. She could see her reflection in the glass. Her face looked tired and alert. She didn't slow down. Then she noticed a black car. It was parked on the side of the street, just ahead of her. It wasn't there the day before. It didn't look like a regular car. Its windows were dark. Its paint was smooth and shiny. The engine was off, but it felt like the car had been waiting. As she got closer, the front door opened. Two men stepped out. They were both dressed in black suits. Their expressions were firm. They didn't speak or wave. They simply looked at her and started walking toward her. Kira stopped. Her body froze. Her hands gripped her bag even tighter. Her eyes locked on the two men. They didn't rush, but their steps were steady. She didn't move. Her feet felt stuck to ground. Her heart beat faster. She didn't know what was happening, but her body told her to be afraid. The men reached her without saying a word. One of them looked at her face. The other reached for the car door again. She didn't speak. They didn't explain anything. They pointed toward the car. Their message was clear. She had to get in. She wanted to run. She wanted to ask questions. But her body didn't listen. She felt weak and unsure. The money in her bag felt heavier than before. Her fingers trembled. Her mind couldn't keep up. She stepped forward slowly. The open door waited. She climbed in. The door shut behind her with a soft click. Inside the car, everything was quiet. The windows made it hard to see outside. The air smelled clean but cold. The seats were smooth. The men sat in front, but they said nothing. The driver started the car and began to move. Kira sat still. Her arms were around the bag. She didn't look left or right. Her eyes stared forward, but she wasn't looking at anything. The silence in the car was heavy. It made her more nervous. She couldn't guess where they were going or what they wanted. Her mind moved in circles. She had done nothing wrong. She had only checked her bank account. She had only taken out what the machine allowed. But the men didn't look like people who made small mistakes. They looked serious. They looked like people who followed strict orders. The car moved through the city. The roads changed. The buildings looked taller. The trees grew fewer. Traffic lights turned red and green, but the ride didn't slow. It kept going, turning down streets she didn't know. Every minute made her feel more lost. She held the bag close the whole time. She didn't let go of it. Her fingers hurt from how tight she held it, but she didn't stop. It felt like the only thing she could control. The men in the front never spoke. They didn't look at her through the mirror. They didn't give signs of where they were going. Their faces were still and cold. Kira tried to guess what this all meant, but she couldn't find an answer. The ride felt long. The silence never broke. The money in her bag was real. The fear in her chest was real too. Everything else was a blur. All she could do was wait and hope that whatever came next wouldn't be worse than the fear building inside her. The car slowed down as it turned into a long driveway. The road was smooth and quiet. Tall fences lined both sides. Thick trees blocked the view from the outside. Kira looked around but couldn't see any signs or names. It didn't look like a public place. The building ahead was large and gray. Its windows were dark. Cameras were fixed on every corner. The gate opened without anyone coming out. It felt controlled, like someone was watching from far away. The car stopped in front of the entrance. The men got out first. One of them opened Kira's door. She stepped out slowly. Her bag was still pressed against her body. The air felt colder. The building gave off a heavy feeling, like a place where people didn't speak unless told to. The men didn't say anything. They pointed toward the door and began walking. Kira followed them without a word. Inside, the lights were bright, but not warm. The floors were polished and quiet under their steps. The walls were plain. Doors were spaced out along a long hallway. No one else could be seen. It felt like the building was empty, but Kira could sense it wasn't. The silence made her more nervous. Every second stretched longer. She looked at the walls, tried to find something familiar, but there was nothing. They passed through 2 sets of double doors. One had a scanner beside it. One of the men placed his hand on it. A green light blinked, and the door opened. They kept walking. Cameras followed them as they moved. Kira could feel their gaze on her. She stayed quiet and kept walking behind them. Finally, they reached a wide room with large wooden doors. One of the men opened it. Inside was a clean, sharp-looking conference room. A long table sat in the middle. Leather chairs surrounded it. A man stood at the end of the room. He was tall, wearing a gray suit, and stood with perfect posture. His face was calm but serious. He didn't look surprised to see her. It felt like he had been waiting. The 2 men stepped back. Kira walked in and stood near the table. The tall man walked closer. His tone was steady. His words were clear. He said his name was Mr. Kane. He spoke slowly, without emotion, but with control. Kira listened carefully, still holding her bag. She didn't interrupt. She didn't move. Mr. Kane explained that the money Kira had found in her account was not meant to be there. He said it was part of a highly sensitive operation. It had been moved by mistake. He said the amount was not small and that it was never supposed to be seen by the public. According to him, this mistake had caused concern among people far above regular authority. He didn't name them, but his voice made it clear they were powerful. Kira's stomach turned as she listened. Mr. Kane didn't raise his voice. He didn't sound angry, but every word carried weight. He said that this matter could not be discussed with anyone. The mistake had to stay hidden. If it became known, it could create problems, serious ones. He told her this in a calm voice, but it didn't make it feel less heavy. She stood still, unsure what to do next. She didn't ask questions. She didn't speak at all. The room felt colder now. The lights above her were too bright. She felt like she was standing in a place where no secrets were allowed to leave. The walls seemed to listen. Mr. Kane gave no space for argument. His message was clear. The money was not hers. It should never have been there. It had to be returned. He said the situation had to be resolved without delay, and her cooperation was not just expected. It was required. He said the people who handled these kind of problems did not accept mistakes. They erased them, and this one needed to disappear, completely and quietly. Kira kept her head low. Her hand still held the strap of her bag. She didn't know how much longer she would be in that room. The door behind her remained closed. The two men stood by it, still silent. She placed it on the table in front of Mr. Kane. The stack made a soft sound as it landed. He nodded slightly. He didn't count the money. He didn't touch it right away. He just looked at it, then back at Kira. His face showed no change, no anger, no relief, just the same calm expression as before. She stepped back slowly. Her bag now felt lighter, but her chest felt heavier. The money had been in her possession for less than an hour, yet it had already changed everything. She had thought it might help her. Instead, it brought her here, into a room that felt colder than the street outside. Mr. Kane explained that the rest of the money would be removed from her account. She would not have to do anything. It would disappear quietly, as if it had never been there. No trace would remain. Her balance would return to what was before. He said it would happen soon. He also made it clear that she could not speak about what had happened. Not to anyone. Not to friends. Not to her children. Not even in passing. The matter was sensitive, he said. Too sensitive for the public to know. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten her directly. But the meaning behind his words was sharp. Kira stood very still. She nodded once. Her eyes didn't move from the floor. Her heart beat fast, but her face stayed calm. She understood what he was saying. She knew that this wasn't something she could joke about later. This wasn't a lucky mistake. This was a funny story to tell. The message was clear. Return the money. Keep quiet. Walk away. But even with the money handed over, she didn't feel safe. She felt small in that room, like a person who had been pulled into something far too big for her. She had only wanted to check her account. She had only withdrawn money because it looked real. Now, she stood in a place that looked like it belonged to people with power and secrets. Mr. Kane didn't say much more. His job seemed finished. The mistake was being cleaned up. The money was going back to wherever it had come from. The process was smooth, like it had been done before. Kira realized she was just a small part of something larger. Her actions had caused concern, but her silence would fix it. One of the men at the door stepped forward and opened it. The sound of the hallway returned. The air outside the room felt no warmer. She walked out, her steps slow and quiet. Her bag hung loose by her side. The cash was gone, but something heavier stayed with her. The building felt just as silent as before. The walls still looked the same. The cameras still watched. She didn't ask questions. She didn't look around. She followed the man back down the hallway. Each step echoed faintly. Her thoughts were loud, but she kept them to herself. She had done what they asked. She had returned what wasn't hers. She had listened to every word, but she knew that nothing would be the same again. The doors closed behind her. The money was no longer in her hands. But the memory of it would not leave so easily. Neither would the warning. Kira walked back into her apartment as the sun was starting to go down. The light in the room looked the same as always, but she didn't feel the same. Her steps were quiet. She locked the door behind her and leaned against it for a moment. Her body felt heavy. Her mind was still full of the images and words from earlier. The apartment looked normal. Her kids were in their room, laughing at something on the television. The table still had breakfast crumbs on it. The grocery list she had written earlier was still sitting by the sink. Nothing had changed in the house, but everything had changed inside her. She went to her room and sat on the edge of her bed. She stared at the wall. Minutes passed, but she didn't move. She tried to breathe deeply, but her chest felt tight. She thought she would feel better now that it was over, but the fear hadn't left. In fact, it had grown stronger. Later that evening, she went to the kitchen and picked up her phone. The banking app was still on her screen. She didn't want to open it, but she had to know. Her hands shook as she tapped it. The balance had changed. The number was small again. The $37 million was gone. She stared at the new number for a while. Then she deleted the app from her phone. She went into her photo gallery and removed the screenshot she had taken of the balance earlier that day. Then she went into her browser and erased her search history. She deleted anything that mentioned banks or large transfers. Her phone still felt like a risk. She thought about the cameras in the building, the silent men, and the warning she had heard. She turned her phone off and placed it in a drawer. Then she took out an old backup phone she hadn't used in years. It still worked. It wasn't connected to anything important. She would use that one for now. The next day, Kira went to work. She stood behind the counter and scanned groceries. She smiled at customers. She helped people bag items. Her hands moved, but her mind didn't. Her eyes looked calm, but she didn't feel calm. Her body was present, but her thoughts were somewhere else. Every time someone looked at her too long, she felt nervous. Every time the store phone rang, her heart jumped. She kept checking the parking lot to see if any black cars were outside. There were none, but the fear didn't go away. At home, her kids noticed something was off. She forgot to ask about their day. She didn't laugh at their jokes. She cooked dinner but barely ate. At night, she double-checked that the doors were locked. Then she checked again before going to bed. She kept the curtains closed. She listened for sounds outside the window. Every noise made her sit up. She didn't tell her children anything. She didn't talk to any friends. She didn't send any messages. She kept her face calm, but inside she was restless. Her mind kept returning to the moment she saw the money, then the building, then the man in the suit. The days started to blur together. Her body moved through her routine, but her thoughts stayed stuck in the same loop. She wondered if anyone was watching her. She wondered if anyone would show up again. She avoided the ATM near the gas station. She didn't even walk that way anymore. At night, she had trouble sleeping. She would lie in bed with her eyes open, thinking about what had happened. Sometimes she would wake up suddenly, her heart racing. She would go to the window and check the street. She always expected to see something unusual, but there was never anything there. The fear didn't go away. It just became part of her daily life. She didn't cry. She didn't panic. But she never fully relaxed again. Even in quiet moments, her thoughts stayed sharp. She kept her guard up. The smallest thing could bring the fear back to the surface. Kira didn't know what might happen next. She only knew that the world she lived in was not as simple as she once believed. And even though the money was gone, the feeling it left behind remained. Weeks passed, and Kira's life returned to its usual rhythm. She woke up early, packed lunches, got her kids ready for school, and went to work. She smiled at customers, folded receipts, and counted change like nothing had happened. On the outside, everything looked normal, but inside her mind, nothing felt the same. She couldn't stop thinking about the strange event. No one around her knew anything had happened, yet she carried it every hour of the day. The quiet in her apartment felt heavier. Even during calm evenings, her thoughts wandered back to that number on the screen. It had felt like a dream, but it was real. She had seen it. She had touched the money. She had given it back. Still, questions remained in her head. Why had the money landed in her account? She was just a grocery store cashier, not someone connected to anything important. She lived a simple life. She didn't know anyone powerful. She hadn't filled out any strange forms or signed up for anything unusual. There had been no warning. It had all happened without reason, or at least without reason she could understand. The man in the suit had said it was a mistake, a banking error, but that explanation never fully sat right with her. Most banking errors were small, a few dollars off, a transfer sent to the wrong person, not tens of millions, not amounts that could change lives, change futures, not amounts that could ruin someone if they vanished. And why had they come for her so quickly? Why had they been so organized? The black car, the silent building, the watchful cameras, the man with calm words and cold eyes. It all felt too smooth, too prepared, as if they had been expecting someone to notice the money, as if they had rehearsed it before. She thought about what kind of project would even involve that much money. What could require so much and still need to stay secret? She didn't know much about the government. She didn't follow politics. She didn't study finance. But the more she thought about it, the more uneasy she became. Sometimes, she wondered if it had been a test, a way to see how she would react. Maybe they had chosen her on purpose. Maybe her quiet life had made her the perfect target. No connections, no voice, no one who would ask too many questions if something happened to her. The thought stayed in her mind, never fully forming, but never going away either. She tried not to let the questions show. She kept herself busy. She cleaned more. She stayed off her phone. She walked different paths to work. She avoided the ATM where it had all started. Her new routine was careful, measured. She watched her surroundings more. She avoided strangers. She noticed every unusual car parked on her street. At night, her mind was the loudest. She would lie in bed and replay everything, from the moment she checked her balance to the moment she left that building. She remembered the faces, the silence, the feeling that her life had been pulled into something far from ordinary. Even though no one had followed up, even though the money was gone and nothing else had happened, she couldn't relax. She didn't feel free. It was like a shadow had been left behind, and it followed her everywhere. Some days, she tried to convince herself it really was just a mistake, a rare glitch in the system, something strange but harmless. She wanted to believe that. She wanted to let it go. But deep inside, she knew better. There had been too much planning, too much control. Kira had learned something that day, not just about money or fear, but about how quickly life can change, how something completely unexpected can pull you into a world you never knew existed. She had stepped into it for just a short time, but it had left a mark. And even though everything around her looked the same, she knew she was not the same person anymore. The number had disappeared. The account had gone back to normal, but the fear had stayed. The questions had stayed. The memory had stayed, and they always would.